I want to show you a strategy for tackling a reading passage. It says ACT here. I've taught ACT and ACT prep for numerous years. And so this would work on the ACT if you're so inclined to take it as well. But the strategy is the same. I want to start with this strategy called the first and last method. And I'm going to explain it, and then I'm going to show you an example. So the first and last method is where you are spending no more than 5 minutes reading the passage. So remember I told you we talked about before, there's 5 passages, each about 500 to 700 words. So you don't want to spend a tremendous amount of time reading the passage. You only have 13 minutes on each passage overall when you break it down. Then you want to go and you want to read the introductory information. Again, the quick stuff that's in italics. Give an idea for what the passage is about. So for example, with this one, the passage of questions 11 through 20 are based on the following passage and supplementary material. This passage is adapted from Taras Gresko, Strap Hanger, Saving Our Cities and Ourselves from the Automobile. Okay, so we know it's something about saving cities and ourselves from the automobile. We know it's something about that. Okay, read the first paragraph. Contains information about the main idea, position, tone, conflict. So, in other words, I'm going to put myself back on camera here. In other words, your thesis is there. Very, especially in the nonfiction, which most of the passages for the 5 are nonfiction. There's one that is fiction. Your thesis is contained here, your main idea usually. These are pretty straightforward in terms of their structure. So in this particular one, we have, though there are 600 million cars in the planet and counting, there are 7 billion people, which means that for the vast majority of us, getting around involves taking buses, ferry boats, commuter trains, streetcars, and subways. In other words, traveling to work, school, or the market means being a strap hanger, somebody who by choice or necessity relies on public transport rather than a privately owned automobile. So here is the thesis. Traveling to work, school, or the market means being a strap hanger, someone who relies on public transportation. So in other words, the majority of people use public transportation. That's the first paragraph. Step 3 is, again, first and last. So read the first 1 to 2 and last 1 to 2 sentences of each paragraph. Main ideas about the paragraph, highlighting key transitional points. So I've done that here a little bit in terms of this. So half the population of New York, Toronto, and London do not own cars. Public transport is how most of the people of Africa and Asia, the world's most populous continents, travel. A century and a half later, the invention of the internal combustion convention, private car ownership is still an anomaly. I underline that. That's very different. We live in an area, we live in a country that uses a lot of public car ownership and cars, especially if you're in Michigan. So because the automobile was invented here, but it's really an anomaly everywhere else. So back to the first and last, public transportation. In many minds is the opposite of glamour, squalid last resort for those who with too many impaired driving charges, too poor to afford insurance, or too decrepit to get behind the wheel of a car. So public transportation is the poor alternative for many people. Given the opportunity, who wouldn't drive? Hopping in a car almost gets you to your destination most quickly, but it doesn't have to be like this. Done right, public transportation can be faster, more comfortable, and cheaper than the private automobile. Notice I'm skipping a lot of the details. Examples of how public transportation can be efficient. Sometimes I'm making margin notes to myself. You don't have to do this, but if you can do this within 5 minutes, you can make these kind of margin notes. You do not need, I'm going to emphasize this, you don't need to do this. If it's going to take you more than 5 minutes, don't do this. One time I taught a student to do this privately. It was one-on-one, and I had him crying. And I'm like, okay, it's not worth that. If you can do it within 5 minutes, do it within 5 minutes. Do what you need to do as far as underlining key points within 5 minutes. Some of you might need to make a few ticks, but don't spend 8, 9, 10 minutes on this. You'll never get it done if you do that. So don't do that. So again, in some cases, faster than cars. Back to reading this in Latin America, China, and India, people working bored. People work Working people board faster loading buses that move like subway trains along dedicated busways, leaving the sedans and SUVs of the rich mired in dawn to dusk traffic. So in some cases, public transportation is faster than the cars, especially in the major cities. We credit the demographers. This transit trend is legs. The millennials, who reached adulthood around the turn of the century and now outnumber baby boomers, tend to favor cities over suburbs and are far more willing than their parents to ride buses and subways. So technology contributes to people riding. So and it gives some examples of all the technology here. There's a lot of examples. You may need to pay attention to this later on in the passage, and the experience of and it says to read the whole last paragraph. So as far as what is part is the strategy, read the last paragraph, summing up the main ideas, highlighting key transitional points. So if I read the last one, we're looking at excuse me, just making sure I'm still recording here. If you credit the demographers, the transition is legs. And part of the reason is their ease with iPads, MP3 players, Kindles, and smartphones. You get some serious texting when you're not driving, and earbuds offer effective insulation from all the most common commuting annoyances. Even though there are more teenagers in the country than ever, only 10 million have a driver's license. That's a shocking fact versus 12 million a generation ago. Baby boomers have been raised to leave it to beaver suburbs, but as they retire, a significant contingent is favoring older cities and compact towns where they have the option of walking, riding bikes. Seniors, too, are most likely to use transit. By 2025, there will be 64 million Americans over the age of 65, already dwellings in older neighborhoods in Washington, D.C., Atlanta, and Denver, especially those near light rail or subway stations, are commanding enormous price premiums over suburban homes. The experience of European and Asian cities shows that if you can make buses, subways, and trains convenient, comfortable, and fast, and safe, a surprising number of large people will opt to ride rather than drive. There's a restatement of the main idea of the passage at the very end. Okay, so that's our first and last. And then moving on to questions, skipping ones that maybe you might find more difficult. If once you read the question and are sure you understand what it's asking, refer back to the passage as needed. Try to predict and eliminate answer choices. Again, some of the question types will all automatically let you refer back, and I'm going to go through the questions on this in the next video.